Greetings, this is Amy Wentley with Chai Knuckles Knitting, and this is episode 2021-14, Basic Socks, the Gusset Decreases. Excuse me. So you'll see I have gray stitches on here. These are the ones that I picked up around the gusset in the last video. That was 2021-13. So I ended up right at the middle of my heel, and I'm going to start a new round, and this is needle 1, this is needle 3. And the needle back here is needle 2. Needle 2 has, for you, doing a woman's sock, 30 stitches on it. I only have 12 because I have a tiny sock here. So this needle has 30 stitches now. This needle has 24, and this needle has 24. Now that gives us a total of 78 stitches all the way around here. We want to get to the point where we take the stitch count from 78 all the way down to 60, where we started. That's our leg. That's the number of stitches we had on our leg for a woman's size sock. So we want to take it down to 60. And we're going to do that by doing 2 decreases every other row. Okay? And where we're going to do those decreases are going to be at the corner on needles 3 and 1. We are not going to do any decreases ever on needle 3 at this point for these gusset decreases. We are going to leave this is needle 2. We are going to leave needle 2 alone. No decreases on needle 2. So the decreases are actually going to be here on needle 3 closest to needle 2, and then on needle 1 here closest to needle 2. The decreases are also going to be 1 stitch in from the edge so that we have a nice little border. So this first stitch on needle 3 and the last stitch on needle 1 over here, we are not going to involve those in decreases. It'll be the 2 stitches before that. And again, it's going to be alternating rounds. One round we're going to do decreases, the next round we're not, the next round decreases, the next round we're not. So let's just get started here. And I'm using again this gray yarn so that you can see the difference. So for some reason I always keep this marker in here. This was the marker between my heel stitches and the new stitches I picked up. You can take those out if you want to. It really doesn't need to be there. It's just a kind of a crazy old habit of mine. So you're going to start out with, I'll go ahead and knit English for you, with needle 1, and we're going to knit until 3 stitches before the end. We are going to knit those 2 stitches together. They're going to lean this way, and then we're going to knit 1. So let's do that. This is going to be 1, 2. Now you're going to have a total of 24 stitches here. So when you decrease on this first round, you're going to be taking it down to 23 stitches. So I keep going until I'm 3 stitches before the end. And when I get to 3 stitches before the end, and these stitches that I picked up at the gusset are a little tight because they're twisted, and that's what we want. So I'm 3 stitches before the end, and I'm going to knit 2 together here. I'm going to make a right leaning decrease, and then I'm going to knit 1. And then I am done with needle 1. Now what I said before is when we get to needle 2, we are not going to do any decreases. So on needle 2, you have 30 stitches, and we're just going to knit straight across your 30 stitches on needle 2. I have 12 because I'm working with a baby sock here, but you're going to have 30 stitches all the way across this needle. Pull the first one tight, pull the second one tight, and just keep going and finish all the stitches on this needle. And I will not pause the recording. You can watch me knit for 12 stitches. So remember, no decreases at the end of needle 2. You're working 30 stitches. You're going to keep this at 30 stitches for the remainder of this whole this whole part of the project. So good. We're at the end of needle 2. We still have 30 stitches on needle 2, no decreases. So we're going to turn now, and now we're at needle 3. When we get to needle 3, we're going to knit 1 stitch, and then we're going to do a decrease. And the decrease we're going to do this time is going to be a slip, slip, knit. That's going to lean to the left. So we're going to slip 1 stitch as if to knit, slip the next stitch as if to knit, put our left needle in the front of those 2 stitches, wrap around the back needle and pull through. So that is a decrease. So we are going to work, instead of 24, because we made a decrease right here, 23 stitches across needle 3. Okay, so the next round is going to be a plain round. You're not going to do any decreases on this round at all. Now, if you lose track and you can't remember whether you decreased on the last round or not, here's how you can tell. Okay, I'm going to bring this in a little bit more so you can see this really up close. Okay, if you have, when you do a decrease, you take 2 stitches together and make 1 stitch out of it. So if you look at this location where we did the knit 2 together, you have 1 stitch on the needle, but if you look right under it, you can see that there are 2 stitches under there. There's 1 here and 1 here, and both of those came together in that knit 2 together. So this means that the last row you worked, you did a decrease. You took those 2 stitches and made it into 1. So that tells you that this time when we go around, we're not going to do any decreases. We're just going to work them plain. So I'm going to pause the recording right now, and I'm going to go ahead and work 1 plain row, and I will come back again and I will show you how to do the decrease row one more time. Hi, I'm back. So I just went ahead and worked a plain round, no decreases, around my gusset. So for a women's sock, at this point, you will now have 23 stitches on needles 1 and 3. Those are these 2. And you will have 30 stitches on needle 2. And your working yarn will be ready to work the next round. Now, if you go to pick up your knitting at some point and you can't remember, and you weren't done with your gusset decreases and you can't remember whether you're on a decrease row or not, all you need to do is pick up your knitting and look at the last row that you did. And if you look at this last row, the next to the last stitch on needle 1, you'll see here that you have a stitch on the needle and a plain stitch underneath it, and then underneath that you actually have 2 stitches that were knit 2 together. So these were your 2 stitches that were knit 2 together on your first row. And this is the plain stitch that resulted. And then this stitch on your needle is the stitch that you worked on the round with no decreases. So since I see a plain stitch and a stitch on the needle, and I don't see 2 stitches right under the needle, I just see a plain stitch, that tells me that my next row is going to be a decrease row. So I will show you how to do the decreases again. Okay, so I start with needle 1 again, and I am going to go ahead and work up until the last 3 stitches. And as I said, this marker isn't necessary, it's just something that I do. And I'm going to work until 3 stitches before the end, and I'm going to knit these 2 together. Tight, tight, tight. There we go. and then knit the last stitch, and that completes needle 1. And now you will have 22 stitches on this needle. And then, as I said before, we do not make decreases on needle 2. Ignore this white yarn back here. This was my project yarn before I changed to the demo yarn. So on needle 2, we're just going to go right ahead and we're going to work all the way across all 30 of those stitches plain. No decreases. We don't want any decreases on needle 2. Oh, and I switched to continental this time. I hope you don't mind. I'm sorry, it's what I'm most used to doing, and I wasn't even thinking about it. But for you continental knitters, you can see how this is done. So there we go. We're almost at the end, and this is the 30 stitches on needle 2 that you are working without decreasing. And I get to the end of needle 2, and then I'm going to go to needle 3. And then I'm going to start with the decrease. So I'm going to knit 1 as a buffer. This is closest to needle 2. Knit 1 for a buffer, and then I'm going to slip, slip, knit. I put the left needle in the front, wrap through the back of the right needle, and then I'm going to finish the row. And this will give me 22 stitches on needle 3. So the next row I'm going to do is going to be a plain row, no decreases. And I'm going to continue to alternate between decrease rows and plain rows until I get to having 60 stitches on all my needles. At the end of the gusset decreases, you're going to end up with 30 stitches on needle 2 and 15 stitches on needle 1 and 15 stitches on needle 3 for a total of 60 stitches. When you do that last decrease and you get to 60 stitches, then you just start knitting plain rounds all around for the foot. So I just wanted to show you what the gusset decrease looks like on a finished sock. So here we go. I'm going to come in a little bit for you. That's what the decreases look like. It's a really nice line on one side of the heel and on the other side of the heel that slowly take us down from 78 stitches down to 60. And here's an example on another sock too. Sock's a little worn. I love these. So this is what the gusset decrease looks like on the one side. And notice there's that 1 stitch buffer and then the decreases. Same thing on the other side. So those are the gusset decreases. And the next video that you'll see in this series is going to be how to work the toe. So just keep working the foot round and round and round and end having finished on needle 3. And I'll be back here in a week or two and with a new video for the toe. So thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.